Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Doing great. How about you, Eric?
Fantastic. We are well into nice summer weather. It's beautiful here in New England.
Yep, looking great. The yard's looking awesome. Flowers all over the place. Good stuff. Love this time of year.
And this year we actually managed to have a spring. For the last couple of years, we've pretty much just gone from winter right to summer. But this year we actually had a spring, so things are really nice out.
Yep, absolutely.
So today we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're actually putting together some topics because we're going to talk a little bit about branding. But specifically, what we're going to talk about is authenticity in branding and how being your authentic self and, quite frankly, good old fashioned truth in advertising is so crucial to promoting yourself, your business, your services, your products. It really is important. And yet, there are a lot of people out there that kind of skirt the line. You know, what they're posting is technically true and yet still very misleading. So we're going to talk about things like this and why you really do need to be straightforward in your promotions. Because the fact of the matter is, at some point, your customers are going to call you on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, now when there's so many different ways to promote yourself and develop business, um, there's a lot of different ways that you can try and bend things. However, as you're saying, if you are not doing it the right way, things are going to catch up with you because the bottom line is it doesn't matter whether you're my age or whether you are a millennial. You're looking for honesty, you're looking for integrity in people, and that is something that hasn't and never will change.
Exactly. You know, people want to know you're telling them the truth. They want to believe you. But when you start playing games with the facts, that becomes much more difficult. And I'll give you an example. There is a company called Arbonne, and they sell primarily makeup, but I think they also do vitamins and things like that. Well, they started their representatives started posting this graphic on social media. And the graphic talks about how Arbonne's growth rate is so much bigger than Google and Amazon that this is really where you need to be involved. Now, at first glance, people start going, "Oh, well, they're growing faster than Amazon and Google." I doubt it. But the reason they post this is because they played games with the numbers. As a 1.5 million dollar company, it's very easy to hit 100% growth rate. When you hit $3 million, that's 100% growth rate. When you're the size of Google and Amazon and you're multi-billion dollar companies, you can be adding customers much faster than Arbonne, but still have a slower growth rate by percentage. And that's the game that they were playing with this graphic. Because on a percentage basis, oh, yes, they're growing much faster than Amazon and Google. But by absolute customers, they're not even close.
Yeah, and if you look at the type of people who would be looking at this kind of thing, you'd have people that look at that are maybe gambling and trying to make a quick buck versus people who are really good, honest business people or consumers that are immediately going to be skeptical by seeing something like that. So you wonder from a business standpoint what made them do that, take that approach in the very first place, because you knew you're going to get both types of reactions, probably more on the skeptical side.
I would think so. And there's a big commercial campaign right now being done by Volkswagen where they are actually making fun of themselves for not being authentic. And if you remember a while back, Volkswagen got caught up in a scandal where they had rigged the emissions so that the cars were testing as being better on emissions than they really were. Well, Volkswagen just launched their electric VW microbus. And the start of their new commercial has somebody listening to the news report of this scandal. And the story of the commercial is that gave them the idea for the electric VW microbus. So, what Volkswagen is doing is, I mean, they're not just poking fun at themselves. They're really coming forward and go, okay, you know what? We learned our lesson. This is what we're doing. This is who we are. And they're trying to come back from that scandal with this commercial that pokes fun at the fact of what they had done.
Yeah, it is a clever way to turn things around. And before that happened, I mean, Volkswagen did have a pretty good name for themselves. Back to the days when we were young, when all we had was a bunch of Beetles running around, but they've done a lot of good as far as motor vehicles over the years too. So I still love driving the Beetle though. Even though the motor's in the back and the trunk's in front of you.
So, I mean, my point is, companies of all sizes right now are sort of learning lessons when it comes to authenticity. But the bottom line of it is it's easier to be authentic than it is to try to get authenticity back. I mean, I don't know if Arbonne will ever get credibility after something like this. Volkswagen is trying to get their credibility back. But what's really more important is not blowing that credibility in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of articles out there about building an authentic brand, and they talk a lot about honesty and integrity and that kind of stuff. One article that was kind of interesting to me, the point number 1 out of 5 was taking time to build relationships. And it basically talks about trust taking time, just like it does in networking or anything else. And it talks about growing your story, finding your place in the community, demonstrating to your customers that you're in this as a partner with them, not just trying to sell to them. And it talks about other things like being consistent, which obviously you got to have a consistent brand story and that kind of thing. Conversation. Authentic brand just don't talk about themselves and broadcast the messages. They listen and engage. And obviously, with today's social market and so on and so forth, they say 83% of consumers say they like it when a brand responds to them on social media. So, I mean, that's a great new advantage of this modern technology that we have is to have some type of a program to do that. And the other things they talk about is, the old common thing, staying true to your values and being honest and transparent. But having the conversation, I think, is a really, really good thing to do. And that's a pretty neat strategy.
Yeah, having conversations with your clients is a big plus. And you mentioned, people are now expecting you to get back to them on social media. If you have a Facebook business page, it allows your customers to contact you on Facebook Messenger. Facebook actually tracks how long it takes you to get back to people and posts that on your business page what the average contact time is.
Yeah,
So
and
that,
that's if you can hold to that.
yeah, I mean, when our customers started contacting us through Facebook, we were completely unprepared for it. We used Facebook to promote, but we weren't really using Facebook Messenger. Immediately, I had to switch all of the settings on our apps so that I was getting notifications when these messages came through, because otherwise they'd be sitting there for days and we wouldn't even notice. So you do need to actually adapt to what your customers want. In the old days, it used to be a phone number. You wanted to reach a company, you called them. Now there are a whole mess of major tech companies, Facebook, Google, trying to find a phone number for these guys is impossible. They want you to email or contact them through forms. Of course, the question is how quickly do they respond to those? But now millennials want to be able to text you, to contact you through Facebook Messenger. So you have to adapt to what your clients actually want you to do and still stay true to your core, to your message, and be authentic about it. It used to be said the medium is the message. Now your message has to rise above many media and be able to be talked about across them.
Again, you have to look at the demographics of the people that you're serving. I mean, if you're serving people who are, a little bit older than millennials and so on and so forth, then obviously you can use a little bit more traditional things. But the millennials, they're all by themselves as far as a different way to do things. It says there's an article, millennials have specific expectations for interaction with brands. And they're not alone. It says about 63% of consumers say they're highly annoyed with repeated generic advertising messages. And some of the stats say that 55% of millennials who own smartphones expect brands to have an app or mobile friendly website. And before making a purchase, 52% consider the brand's use of technology. 39% say they are loyal to brands whose use of technology is up to date. And 47% report that social media has helped introduce them to new brands. So it's really, really important to be up to snuff as far as using all this technology to your favor, because that's where people are going. And the bottom line is, if you're not doing as well as your competitor is, chances are you're going to lose out.
Yes. And it's very funny with all of this talk about how important authenticity is to millennials, because millennials themselves are not terribly authentic. And you see this because they've done surveys of millennials, and millennials say, they don't want to buy things, they want experiences, they want to go places, they want to travel around. And all of the surveys are pretty clear about that. But when you actually look at the data of what millennials are doing, what they're buying, where they're spending their money, they're not going anywhere. They're ordering food to come into the house. They're streaming movies into the house, and they don't do these experiences. So the generation has sort of created this image that in itself is not authentic.
Yeah, and technology itself is the internet is really nothing more than a whole lot of ways to retrieve information about different things. And one of the lines that really, to me, makes a whole lot of sense: millennials aren't buying; they're searching. They love hanging out on their social media, looking at this and looking that, and they're just looking for different things here and there that they might want to do. And I would imagine that impulse hits them even more that way. So they're not buying what things that you hope they're going to buy. They're just searching around, and if you hit them properly, then you might have a shot at them. So that's something
Yes.
you got to keep in mind.
And the changing trends, though, allow you to be even more true to yourself than previously if you can manage the technology to help you do it. And a great example of this is restaurants. There's a new trend now that restaurants are opening up, but they're not serving people. The restaurateurs are opening up, cooking the food that they want to cook. And there's maybe one or two tables in the place, but it's all geared towards DoorDash, Uber Eats. So the restaurateurs are getting to create the food that they always wanted to create and not worrying as much about the building itself, the restaurant itself. They're getting to focus on the food because most of their customers never see the restaurant. So it's very interesting, how you can pick something to be true to. And now, technology lets you deal with the rest of it so that you can really focus on what your authentic interest is, on what your authentic skill is, and not have to deal with a lot of things that are just in the way.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, convenience means a whole lot, even more and more to them, and that's what they've been brought up with, is finding easier ways to do things. And so, I mean, you and me, I'd rather go hang out in a restaurant myself, but taking a look at things online, and if I could make it pop out on my computer, that might help me get more curious on it. But I can understand what they're doing, especially when all their lives are helter skelter and multitasking and this and that and whatever. However, they can save a little bit of time and convenience. That's what they're going for.
Exactly. Now, another example of inauthentic promotion. I've seen this, and I happen to know this is not being driven by the company. This is one particular representative of a company. So I won't mention the company because I don't want to unfairly paint them with the brush of this one person. It's a network marketing company. And this one representative is talking about how she sold $4 million in merchandise. And of course, if you look into it, well, she didn't sell it. Her line sold it. And she doesn't give a time period over how long it took them to sell it. And of course, if you look deeper, it's $4 million in list price. That's not, she's talking about how successful she is, but that's not actually what she made. It's not what she sold. And when this person goes to events, they're very hush hush about what they're selling. And in fact, I've actually heard her talk about the fact that she's a coach because she teaches people. Well, she doesn't really teach people, she's a salesperson. And a lot of salespeople are now trying to pass themselves off as coaches or consultants, either because they're not comfortable being a salesperson, they're embarrassed. Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a salesperson. Every business on the planet needs salespeople. But if you're a salesperson, say you're a salesperson. Be proud that this is what I'm selling, this is what it's going to do for you. The hemming and hawing about, well, what she really does and the title, it just makes you not trust her.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like the word shares person instead of salesperson, and most people do too, because the bottom line is if you really want to develop relationships with people, you have to share solutions, comfort, and those type of things, not commodities. And when we talk about networking and teaching people that, we talk about talking about your value added and your benefits rather than what you're trying to sell today, because people really aren't looking for that. They're looking for the whole package, and it really starts with the person. So obviously, especially in network marketing, that's got to raise some eyebrows for sure, because they're not taught to do it that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. There are a lot of people, especially for network marketing. There's a lot of people that get into these companies and don't either go to the training or pay attention to the training. And you see a lot of it on LinkedIn when the profile posted says consultant at self-employed. Well, if you're a real consultant, even if you own the company, you've named the company. So you should be consultant at whatever the name of the company is. When you see consultant at self-employed, you know they're not really a consultant. They're most likely a network marketer and they're trying to get people into their line. But again, if you're not being authentic about it, why would somebody trust you enough to join your line? That
Yeah,
authentic piece is so important because you don't want to partner with someone you don't trust. You don't want to buy from someone you don't trust. Most of the time, you don't even want to be around somebody you don't trust.
right. And the successful, the real good network marketing companies out there, they teach you to talk consistently about what your brand is and what your value add is and so on and so forth. And you got to be proud to do that. And if you're going to beat around the bush, there eventually that's going to catch up with you there too, because they have their own codes of ethics. And if you're not doing things in the proper way, eventually you're going to get in trouble for doing that in the direct marketing market too. So
Exactly. I mean, there are consequences in some cases through the company you're with, in some cases, legal consequences. But the biggest is just going to be in your relationships with coworkers, clients, suppliers. If they can't trust you because they don't feel you're being authentic, or if you're deliberately misleading people and you're definitively not being authentic, then that is going to cut down your success tremendously. Because the fact of the matter is, no matter how good you are at being inauthentic, somebody will discover it. And in all reality, they will tell people, oh, this person lied to me. The fact of the matter is, and this has been a statistic for decades. If someone's happy with what you did for them, they'll tell one person. If they're unhappy with what you did, they'll tell seven.
yep, I mean that's that's just the way people are. So again, it's really really important. Emphasizing again the importance of developing relationships with your clients rather as individuals rather than as just customers and consumers. And so you really have to get the reputation to do that. And it talks about millennials, getting back to that again, a few things that they really care a lot about that people might not think that they do. Number one is family. That generation deeply cares about becoming good parents when they start having children, because a lot of them are waiting a little bit later to do that kind of thing. And that's very, very important. They also care a whole lot about philanthropy. And it's really cool being involved with these chambers of commerce youth organizations and seeing the different things that they do out there, volunteering for different people and doing a whole lot of different things. But it says around 75% of millennials donated to a nonprofit. And this was back a few years ago, and spent 57% of them spent time volunteering. So even though they may not be making a whole lot, they really have big hearts and it's really, really important to them. And talking about society, they appreciate it when the brands that they're buying from, that the brands that they're dealing with have established programs to give back to society in some way, shape, or form. And the bottom line is the millennials can teach all of us something as far as these qualities go, because really deep down, I think most people do care about those things.
And when you share those qualities and you build real relationships with your customers, it works to your advantage, not just in that they will come back and they will refer you and they will buy more, but when things go wrong, if they have a relationship with you, if they feel a trust towards you, they are more likely to cut you some slack when things go wrong. Apple has always been very good at creating relationships with their customers. So when there's a technical problem with an iPhone, their customers don't abandon them. They stick it out, they work with they work with their customers. And iPhone has one of the highest retention rates in the industry. By the same token, Google has virtually no relationship with their customers. You can't call them. It's difficult to get a hold of any help over there. So when they released their original Google phone, which was an abject disaster, people abandoned them in droves because they didn't have that connection to them. So it's important for you to build those relationships. And the only way to do that is to base it on your authentic self. It's about being true to who you are true to your values, and true to your customers.
Yeah, and if you diversify too much away from what your authentic brand is, as you mentioned with the Google, it's just going to confuse people, and it's not only going to hurt you as far as your new venture goes, but it's going to make people wonder: are you really, really as authentic with what you're really good at doing, or have been until now? And are you going to stay that way? Or are you going to continue to go all over the place? So it's really, really important to be very, very consistent. And what is it that Andre Agassi? What I forget what he was marketing, but image is everything. And if you change that image to confuse people, it's going to hurt you rather than help you.
Exactly. So we're heading up against the end of our time. So Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for this week?
Even though there's so many different ways to hit people with your brands, it really goes back to the old basics that have been what people care about forever. And this is honesty, integrity, expertise, that kind of thing. You have to develop the relationships with your potential clients out there to keep them on board.
Absolutely. I think for me, the big takeaway is that it is worth focusing on your values and being honest about them, because the benefits you get, everything you give out, comes back tenfold. So you really want to be your authentic self and be honest with people, because not being honest is going to push them away. And again, no matter how good a liar you are, it's going to be found out. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts. You can also catch us at the Apple Podcasts app, the iTunes Store, Spotify, iHeartRadio app, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. See you then.